6th grade, Module 6, Lesson 5, Problem Set. Number 1. Below is a relative frequency histogram of the maximum drop in feet of a selected group of roller coasters. Describe the shape of the relative frequency histogram. So let's look at the shape first. If I kind of outline it here, it looks like it's skewed to the right. So there's a big slope there, a long big slope there, so it's going to be skewed to the right because that's on the right side. What does the shape tell you about the maximum drop in feet of roller coasters? So that tells us that most of the maximum drop lies on the left-hand side, and I would say most of them are between 50 and maybe 170 feet is the average drop. But then there are some that are have quite a bit bigger one, like this 400 to 450 foot drop is a very large drop. So let's say most have a maximum drop between 50 to 170. Is that feet? Let's see. Yeah, feet. There are some, or we could say, however, there are some roller coasters that have a drop of up to, so we could say up to 450 feet. C. Jerome said that more than half of the data values are in the intervals from 50 to 130. Do you agree with him? Why or why not? So he's saying more than half of them are between 50 and 130. So we can look at that. So let's see, the relative frequency here, it's about halfway there. Let's call that 27 hundredths, and this is about halfway between, we can call that 33 hundredths. So if we added those together, oh, that should be a 6. That would be 60%, because remember we can just move the decimal point over 2 places, so that would be about 60%. So he said more than half the data values, well, more than half would be 50%, so more than 50%, and it's at about 60%, because I just guessed that, or did a little estimating there. So, but I would say, yes, I agree. Yes, I agree. Why or why not? I would say that interval contains about 60% of the data. Number 2, the frequency table below shows the length of selected movies shown in a local movie theater over the past 6 months. A, complete the relative frequency column, round the relative frequencies to the nearest thousandth. Okay, so I'm going to find my calculator, but first let's add up. We need to know the total frequency, so let's add all of these together. Let's do 1 plus 4 plus 7 plus 5 plus 7 plus 3 plus 1. And let's add things that are easy to add together. So I'll do the 7s, that's 14, and 2, plus we have the 4, plus 5, plus 3, and then we have 16, plus 4 would be 20, plus 5 would be 25, plus 3 would be 28. So you could have added that differently. That is how I came up with mine. So we know the relative frequency for 80 to 90 is 1 out of a total frequency. It occurs 28 times. There are 28 data points. So let's get our calculator up and do 1 divided by 28 would be, we round to the nearest thousandth, so there's a 7 in the 10,000ths place, which is going to change that 5 to a 6. So 0.0 and 36 thousandths. Is there another one? We can do that again. So this would also be 36 thousandths. So let's do 4 divided by 28. We can write them all out. 7 divided by 28, 5 divided by 28, 7 divided by 28, and 3 divided by 28. And this was 1 divided by 28. Okay, so let's start with 4. Okay, round it to the nearest thousandths. There's an 8 in the 10,000ths place, which is going to make the 2 into a 3, so 143 thousandths. And that's the only 4. Okay, 7 divided by 28 is 25 hundredths, no rounding needed. And it's also right here. 5 divided by 28 is 400, let's see, there's a 5, which is going to turn the 8 into a 9, so 429 thousandths. Hold on, that doesn't seem right. Let me look at that again. Seems too high, because that shouldn't be higher than the 7. Yeah, that seems more accurate. Okay, so the 5 would round the 8 up to a 9. So let's do 179 thousandths. So make sure you're looking at your answers. And if something doesn't make sense, just do it again. And then 3. Oops, I erased the wrong one. Okay, this is 179 thousandths, and this was 25 hundredths. Okay, 3 is 107 thousandths. Okay. So there's the relative frequencies. If you want, we can go through and make them all into percentages. You just move the decimal point 2 places to the left. So like this would be 3.6%. This would be 14 and 0.3%, 25%, 17 and 0.9%. I think it's easier to look at them in percentages and so there are our percentages. Okay, what percentage of the movie lengths are greater than or equal to 130 minutes? Perfect, because we have already done our percentages. So what percentage of movie lengths are greater than or equal to 130 minutes? So these two columns would be greater than or equal to 130 minutes. So that's 10 and 7/10% plus 3 and 6/10%. Let's add those together. Get 14 and 0.3%. Are greater than or equal to 130 minutes. C, draw a relative frequency histogram. Hint, label the relative frequency scales starting at 0 and going up to 30 hundredths, marking off intervals in 5 hundredths. Okay, so it told us how to start, which is great. Let's get rid of some of this. Okay, so we're starting at 0 and going up to 30 hundredths in, it said by 5 hundredths. So then we'd have 10 hundredths, 15 hundredths, 20 hundredths, 25 hundredths, 30 hundredths. So this is the relative frequency side. And then, let's see, length of movie would go down here. And we go by scale of 80 to 90, and it's growing by 10 every time. So we're just going to count by 10. I'm going to start at 80 and end at 150, counting by tens. So we have 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, 150. Okay, so now we just need to draw everything. Okay, so from 80 to less than 90 was relative frequency of 0.36. So a little bit, let me use a different color. So not quite to 500ths. So right there. From 90 to 100, the next one is 143 thousandths, so right before 15. 100 to 110 is 25 hundredths. 110 to 120 is 17 and 9/10, so kind of in the middle of 15 and 20. And then 120 to 130 is also 25 hundredths. Same size as that one. 130 to 140 is 107 thousandths, so right about 10. And then 140 to 150 is back down to just 3 hundredths. So about like that. Okay, we just need to give it a title. Say relative frequency of movie lengths. Okay, so there is our histogram. Describe the shape of the relative frequency histogram. So if we're looking at the shape of this, I use my highlighter, I would say it's pretty symmetric, so I'm going to call it approximately symmetric. So then what does the shape tell us about the length? So the shape tells us that most of them lie in the middle. I would say most of them are probably between about here. Most of them lie right in the middle between 100 and 130 minutes. Let's say most movies are between 100 and 130 minutes. Number 3, the table below shows the highway miles per gallon of different compact cars. What is the total number of compact cars? Okay, so we can find out the total number of compact cars by adding up the frequencies here. So let's see, we have 3 plus 4 plus 5. So 3 plus 4 is 7. And then plus 5 would be 12. Plus 2 would be 14, 15, 16. So there's a total of 16 cars, which we need to complete the relative frequency column. Round them to the nearest thousandth. So everything's going to be out of 16. So let's do 3 out of 16, 4 out of 16, 5 divided by 16, just all the way down. Or however, this is just going to be 0, because 0 out of 16 is 0, and then 1 out of 16. Okay, let's start with 3 divided by 16. So back to the calculator. Round to the nearest thousandth. So that 7 is going to turn into an 8. So 188 thousandths. And then 4 divided by 16 is probably 25 hundredths. Oop. Make sure you clear it. Five divided by 16. 313 thousandths. 2 divided by 16. 125 thousandths probably. And 1 divided by 16. 63 thousandths when we round it. And this is also 1 divided by 16, so it is the same thing. And we can, let's go through and make them all percentages. So remember, we just moved the decimal point 2 places to the right. So this would be 18 and 8/10%, 25%, 31 and 3/10%, 12.5%, 6 and 3/10%, 0%, 0%, and 6 and 3/10%. C, what percent of the cars get between 31 and up to, but not including, 37 miles per gallon? So between 31, let's see, here's 31, and up to, but not including 37. So up to here. So that would be 25, 31 and 3/10. Let's do 25 plus 31 and 3/10 would be 60, 56 and 3/10%. Get between 31 and 36%, or 31 and 36 miles per gallon. D, Juan drew the relative frequency histogram of the highway miles per gallon for the compact cars shown on the right. Did Juan draw the histogram correctly? Explain your answer. Okay, so first let's look. So it should go from 28 to 52, because that's where all of our data lies. So it starts at 28 and goes to, oh, it only goes to 46. So we're missing all the way up to 52. So already I'm going to say no, because he's missing some data. Let's see if there's anything else wrong. Does he have between, let's see, 43 to 46 right here? That should be 0, right? But he has data there. He says, maybe he squished all of his data together. He left out, so it looks like what he did was he left out these because they were 0. So he just said, you know what, I don't need them anymore. But he's wrong, because now he's labeled things incorrectly. So let's say he did not draw this correctly. He did not draw it correctly because he didn't leave space intervals . 43 to less than 46, and 46 to less than 49. These are needed to represent relative frequency 0, because there were none in between those intervals. We can't just leave it out. It's important that we know that there are zeros. He also forgot to draw a bar for 49 to less than 52. And that is the last question.